Chattel slavery. Started in Jamestown, Virginia, 1619, and allegedly ended 1865 with the 13th Amendment. The Emancipation Proclamation, of course, freed slaves in the South, but not all of the slaves in the country. That was allegedly done by the 13th Amendment, which we've kind of gone over. It has the exception clause that does allow slavery in the United States as long as you are considered a criminal. So if we go from 1619 to 1865, that is 246 years of chattel slavery. Which would mean if we go from 1619 to 2018, that's 399 years of some form of mass incarceration. So basically, blacks have always been in some form of mass incarceration since they have come here. And now obviously blacks were here before 1619, Africans in some form, but for all intents and purposes, a significant portion of blacks in this country have been incarcerated by mass, en masse, since 1619. Right now, there are more blacks incarcerated in the United States, either probation, parole, jail, prison, than there were slaves in 1850. Now, there's some, that was actually cited in Michelle Alexander's book, and The New Jim Crow, and it was refuted by a black scholar who had came up with, well, there are more blacks in the country, so there would be more blacks incarcerated. And I'm sure that that probably got a lot of play, because a lot of times that has been something that has been used to discredit black scholarship, trying to point out these dynamics that are going on in our country. But the thing is, black men in particular are 8% of the population, and we are disproportionately incarcerated. So if we're going to talk about chattel slavery lasting 246 years, mass incarceration in North America 399 years, the break in that would be 1865, which was the mass incarceration that was chattel slavery, and the mass incarceration that is mass incarceration as we know it. Before I go further with post-traumatic stress disorder, I want to talk about a Marxist definition. Now, the general theory of Marxism is a class-based theory. It is not completely an economically based outcome, but it is class-based, as to where they have clearly defined classes. They have upper class, they have a middle class, they have a lower class or underclass, and every dynamic in society has to do in Marxism with the disruption or argument or interaction between these particular classes. Most of the time, it has something to do with money, because money is generally what defines the class, because we don't necessarily have the born into aristocracy in the United States. So most of our Marxists talk, in applying it to American society, is generally talking about those classes, and those classes, for most part, is going to be determined by your economic status. But a proletarian is someone whose only role or property is their children. The only thing they own is themselves, their labor, their children, and their labor. They don't own their homes, they don't own land, they don't own anything. So the only thing that they have to trade is their labor. This is what is known as the working class. And why that's unfortunate is because people are generally reduced to not owning with coming to privatization. At one point you had a common community as to where you can go and get what you need, and there wasn't any restrictions of you stay over here, this is mine. It was a common area and everybody kind of got what they needed. As people began ownership and restriction where you can't come on this property and you have to stay over there, people were reduced in their ability to access wealth or subsistence, which means now they're reduced to the only thing they own is their ability. What is unfortunate and unique to the American slave was that, well, first, the unique thing about chattel slavery was that was one of the very few, if not only, forms of slavery that removed the humanity from the person. Even indentured servants had a contract. It was a plan. Now that contract could have been, and generally was, abused, but there was a plan. Okay, you paid this much for the passage to the new world from the old world. You owe me this much money. I'll work for you for this amount of time. You'll be given a wage. Generally, the wage never covered the expenses, so the person ended up working for him. So there was always abuse, but there was no question of humanity. Even the Native Americans were considered, quote unquote, savages and uncivilized, but they were people. The slave, the African, was told that they didn't even have a soul. So post-traumatic stress disorder can occur following this is the military definition, United States military definition, can occur following a life-threatening event like military combat, natural disasters, terrorist incidents, serious accidents, or violent personal assault like rape. Most survivors of trauma return to normal given a little time. Now, that's just not to go into a long thing because we're almost at 9 minutes. But think about the terrorist incidents, because that's all slavery was terrorism. You're grabbing people, making them, packing them in like cargo, 90 days on a slave ship. People are seasick, all the way to a new place, stripped of their land, raped, beaten, hobbled, all kinds of things, chained up. 399 years of that, because a significant portion of our community is still in chains. A significant portion of our community is in cages that PETA will go crazy if dogs were in. Why is there no understanding or expectation that this serious disorder can come about on a veteran for 1 or 2 tours which may be 2 years tops. And we're talking about a people under the same duress, by definition, for 399 years. And we don't have a realistic expectation that there should be some type of disorder coming from these things that this group of people have endured. That's something to think about. Again, we have to collect the words to communicate the picture, because if people don't have the words, they cannot see it.